Okay. Ash Walker, how's that? So here's what we're going to do today. So today, we're going to start with one of the most basic things in trading, and one of the basic things that this indicator does. Okay. So we're going to record this. Today is our first day on support and resistance. We won't spend a lot of time on support and resistance. We'll talk about today, what it is, why we use it. Tomorrow will be a little bit more in depth on how we use it in our risk and reward. Okay. A little bit more advanced stuff tomorrow on support and resistance, because support and resistance is fairly basic things when it comes to trading. Now, support and resistance levels, why do we use them? Okay. So let's start with what they are actually. Okay. What is support and resistance levels? Okay. So on these charts, our support and resistance levels are easily labeled. Okay. They're labeled automatically. Okay. They're labeled automatically, green being resistance, support, and support being red. Now, what is resistance? Okay. Resistance is when the chart is moving in an upward direction. Okay. A place where, a place where the chart can pause, reverse, slow down, break through. These resistance levels, remember when we talk about resistance is on the way up. Okay. So that means resistance is where, if the chart is heading on its way up, it's going to get to a resistance level. Okay. Right. So when we're charts heading up here, you can see resistance. It starts to head down, they turn red. Right. And then we're talking the other direction. So first, if the chart's moving up, where the chart wants to slow down, reverse, slow down or pause, reverse, or break through. Okay. Now that is the same definition of support levels. Just support levels are going the other direction, right? We have support as it's heading down, right? Okay. So support is heading, when we're heading downwards, support will be those levels. Okay. The levels where, the chart can bounce, right? Pause, reverse, these are these levels on the way down. So when we're talking about support, we're heading down. We're talking about resistance, we're heading up. Okay. Makes sense, right? Your support is underneath you. That supports you. Your resistance is I always, for some reason, picture myself, trying to sit out, stand up, or sit down, right? The support is where I'm going to sit, and the resistance is what's going to stop me from standing up. Okay. Easy peasy. That's kind of the first, what support and resistance are. Okay. And what support and resistance is really, and we'll do this on a little bit longer time frame. Okay. Support and resistance are places on on this chart, okay, that are going to tell us what this chart wants to do. Now, a lot of people like to, look at the chart and say the chart's telling a story, right? So if this chart is telling the story, a major part of that book or that story that is being told is what happens at these support and resistance levels, right? As you can see, this is here, we'll just use one prime example, right? You can see this level. This is a big one yesterday. I talked about it in our KILLSHOT chat. Okay. This was a big one yesterday. This was a support line as we had news, right? We had some flash up. We had open, push this up. We had a nice run almost up to back to 34. And then this thing reset itself, which we'll go over a little bit more here today after we get out of the recording. But this support line, as you can see, is where this chart made a decision. Okay, so I like to think of support and resistance levels as places on the chart where the chart is going to make a decision. Right at this line, bounced, came back down and broke it. Right, and after it broke that, had this run where it eventually got back down to this 238 where I talked about last night, filling that displacement, and then it's continued on this downtrend. I talked about it yesterday, sorry. But this area here, as you can see, right, this support line, right, chart was coming down, hit this, bounced, and then made a decision, right? The decision from this area is either that it's going to head up this way, it's going to hold that support line, or it's going to break through and head down. Okay. This is what we call a decision area, right? What this chart might want to do, where this chart might want to go, where you might want to join this trend, where you might want to, maybe you're waiting for a rejection to get back on this because the trend was essentially still in an uptrend, which we'll go over that part more as well later this week. But these support and resistance levels on this chart are places where this chart wants to make a decision. Okay, and that is what support and resistance levels are. There are those places, right? We had this signal here, but you can see it was rated a resistance level. Actually, that resistance level came after, created a resistance level, even though you could see that it had one over here as well, right? And so when you look long-term, right? When you look long-term, you can see that support and resistance levels, and this is a prime example, right? Are places on the chart where it makes a decision. And this is where it comes to some technical analysis and where it comes to, you know, using these charts and their patterns and what they do to understand where the chart wants to go better. Right? Like this signal here. Mr. Bowers is here. One sec. Okay. And then here we go. He was here. Ah, there it is. Okay. Okay, so you can see, and this is a prime example, right? Resistance level right here. And even at this was news that shot this thing straight up, even in news with all that volume, right? 100% there is in that KILLSHOT Google Drive, there is a video of how to set your alerts. So yes, there is, but we can go over that too in a later date. But you can see that these support and resistance levels play over and over. We had news come here where it just had this straight up movement, but you can see the resistance level was here as well. It became a support level right there on that bounce, right? You can see that this line played again here, and the chart made a decision there, right? It actually made two decisions, right? In this movement, the first decision was this push up through news that it wanted to reject, right? Pull in a whole bunch more volume, reject, head back down to, guess what? What did it head back down to? You can see it right there, right? And well, actually passed through the 238 and hit a support level right there. So made a decision here to stop, reject, head all the way back down to that support level, and then made another decision to head back up. And then what happened when it got back to this level? It made another decision here. So it's like, okay, well, we're going to bounce. We're going to get back above these EMAs. Now, if you're in this trade and holding it at this could be could be where you set your TP, right? Because this is where the chart's probably going to get back to. And here is where it might make a decision. Now, when it made this decision, it made the decision to continue to go right through it, right? Right? So it bounced off this support line, which you can see right there, right back to that resistance level. Okay, and then made another decision at that resistance level, broke through here and continued on an uptrend, right? Long term. Right, so you can see these moments, these support and resistance levels, and why we use them is that they give you, right, decision moments in the market. They play off structure, right? They give us these determination when we see these support and resistance of where this thing might want to go. And like I just said, right, we're looking for, especially when we do some, Bryce always says, look left, right? When we're looking left and looking at that structure of the market or the technical analysis, right, of what the market looks like. The support and resistance levels are going to be places where they tell us, this market tells us what it wants to do. Right? It told us what it wanted to do at this support line, and it told us what it wanted to do at this break of this resistance. Now, I'm not a huge fan of breakouts. There would have been a nice blue arrow in the one in here, which this would have been a nice, right, long position trade in here. Right, your stop tight in this thing. Potentially we're running all the way up there over the next couple of days. Right? So decision moments. Okay. Support and resistance are places on the chart that the chart wants to make a decision. Okay, that makes sense. I'm gonna clear all this mess I got on here. Okay, now the next thing. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about when it comes to support and resistance levels is why we use them. Now, there's a couple big reasons. We just went over, one of those reasons is that these are the places on the chart where it makes decisions. But one of the major reasons why I use them is this is how I taught myself how to trade. Now, in the beginning of learning the trade in my practice account, all I did was trade support and resistance levels. I didn't have lines or anything on the chart. I literally just traded it on the one, support and resistance, support, buy, resistance, sell, right? I barely looked at the longer term. I was just in here over trading. Now, one thing I did in the very beginning was I traded and traded and traded. And so I traded all these support lines, all these resistance levels. You wouldn't have saw any EMAs or any colors or any arrows or anything on here. You wouldn't even have saw these support and resistance levels. But one thing I had understood when I first started to teach is that I could just look at a chart and understand where it was going. Okay, so these support, and that is just based off support and resistance levels. That's why it's added into this, and that's why it's one of those basic things that we need to learn, right, in order to understand how to read a market, how to understand the direction it wants to go. It was the very first thing that I figured out, that even just on support and resistance levels, I could just win here. I could have, this, I could just take trades on, it was a much different chart back then, as we've talked about before, trading coming out of pandemic and, having 18 months of uptrend. Was a much different chart to trade on, but these support and resistance levels, right? Breaks this support, trade, breaks this support right here, trade, right? There's all these opportunities in this chart to even just trade off these support and resistance levels. And that's why I use them. That's why I feel like they're important. They're still, places on this chart where, we can grab a few pips off a support break or a resistance break, get ourselves in a protected position, or even, bouncing and using these EMAs to head back to those, right, as TPs and having an even better entry. Okay. So why we use them is because they are important places on the chart that we can focus on, right? That we can say, this is where our TP is. This is where the bounce we're looking for. I don't want to enter right here because it could just hit this and bounce. I don't want to join the trend at these moments. These are just another little extra piece on why we use them. Okay. And to take that just a little bit further, okay, I'm going to talk about how we use them for risk to reward. I was going to do this tomorrow on its own, but we have some time today. Okay. Right. So how we can use them for risk and reward, because I don't think anybody should be trading here. We're going to go, as soon as we get off this, we're going to go over the news, and we got some crazy news happening this morning at 7. So I think it's today. I'll have to check again. But so what's important about these support and resistance levels, right? This is support, and then we have resistance levels, is that, yeah, that's the one. okay, is that we want to make sure that wherever these support and resistance levels, because they're decision moments on the chart, we want to make sure when we're entering, we're giving ourselves enough reward back to these levels or back to structure that the risk to reward makes sense. Now, I'm going to talk specifically here about breakouts. And this is something that I traded lots of, okay, in my path to here. Okay. And I started to realize, and most of the time, to be honest, I was trading breakouts. Does everybody know what a breakout is? Okay, so breakout would be trying to join this chart, and I'll show you a breakout trap right here. Okay, would be trying to join this chart as it broke this resistance level. Okay, does anybody know what this actually is? So I used to try and join the breaks and take the breakouts. Okay, this is a trap. This push, flash through, and then look at it. Down it goes hundreds of pips. Okay, this is a trap. This was one here too. This was, they played with the highs and manipulating the highs to try and trap you into getting into a buy and then turning it and heading it in the direction they want to go so they can tap out all these stop losses and bring in volume into the market. And I used to trade this a lot. I started to realize that the only time I was taking losses was when I was trying to trade breakouts. Okay, so these EMAs give us a better space. Now, if we're going to enter this buy, this is actually a very good position to enter that, because you have this position here and this is your reward, right? This space in between here is your reward, right? Ooh, that's a nice little line there. Okay, let's do that a little better. Okay, this is your reward. Okay. Okay, that's the reward in the trade. Right? These are your pips. This little space in here, right? Which is, okay, we can see that is 454 up to 474. There's 20 pips there. Now, of course, we want to get more than 20 pips. That's a 2% trade though, right? So there's an opportunity in here, right, for your reward, because the reward is back to structure, right? You already had this green line here. So you know at this green line, right, that this chart is going to make a decision. Now that decision might be that it breaks and runs, but if you enter here, you have all this space to put yourself into a protected position when it does get to that decision. So maybe you got your stop loss in here for 10 pips. It hit that, made a decision, hit you. You took 10 pips instead of taking a loss, right? Because you use this reward area to get yourself in a position. Right? And here's the thing. This is your reward with your risk being back here, right? This is going to be your risk, right? This is your risk below it. Okay. Okay, that's your risk below it. Okay. This is your risk reward. Okay. Now, what happens is, and I'm going to erase all this stuff, so I hope everybody can see that this would be your reward, right? This would be your risk down here. Okay. Now, if this shifts and you enter, right, instead of entering here, you enter at this line, right? This line of the breakout. You enter at this line in the breakout, right? So you enter there, right? Your reward moves up to this empty space. And your risk moves into here because, and this is a very easy bounce, even just a pullback brings you back down to that 238, right? And that's be close to your stop loss, which this eventually hits. Now, there is some structure over here, right? Which it could be potential, but because this, these are your higher highs, this line, you don't actually have any reward on the board. Right? This reward is from hours and hours ago. There is no structure in here that's close by. That's right next to you, right? Back to previous close structure. Looking to the left, there is no reward here. This is all risk. on this breakout. All risk. Right? There is no, unless you could use the structure back here, but if we're looking right there, once, twice, third time coming to it, we try and break as it comes through. There is no reward. Look, it's empty. This is an empty space. It's all risk. Once you realize that, instead of trying to jump these things as they break and giving yourself just a 15, 20 pip better entry below. Yeah, I mean, it would be different if I was looking left, right? It would be different looking left at this place, right? It broke this, right? Then I could look left. But you can see if you go left, oh, it rejected there and it rejected there. Twice, 2 times here, right to your left, is a place where this rejected. Okay, so this reward, there isn't any. There isn't any previous structure that's close enough that gives us any reward. So trying to jump in this breakout, it's all risk. So if you can shift, okay, I'm just going to go back a bit here. If you can shift your entries just slightly, right? Just slightly, so that entry isn't, in this, your risk area doesn't become where the chart is, right? If you can just shift your entry slightly, okay? If you can shift your entry slightly from the top of this to here, just shift your entry just a bit, just slightly, 10 pips, it'll make all the difference. Even if you are trying to take this breakout, you can get yourself in a protected position so that you don't get caught in the reverse, right? In the reversal. Okay, so you just shift your entry slightly. This would have been an even better entry as it ran back up and broke it again. But if you're trying to enter in here, which I did a lot of, it's the same thing. If you're trying to enter at at a break of a support, same thing over here. I mean, there was a bunch of pips on the board there, but if you're trying to enter here, if you shift your entries, every entry just 10 pips below, you're going to take 2 to 3 losses out of your trades. Okay. Good. Awesome. Okay, so this is going to be why we want to use these support and resistance levels. Just shifting those entries just slightly so that our risk and reward shift. Okay. Perfect. All right. Now we are going to stop our recording for the day. So this is day 2 of the boot camp with some support and resistance levels. We'll go over them a bit more tomorrow. And I'm going to stop the recording here. And then we're actually going to get on the charts. And you guys are going to see how I set these charts up for mornings. Okay, so just let me stop here.